Hey, what's up music lovers? Thank you so much for clicking on this channel, and today we're doing the 5th episode of a series that I like to call Artists That Deserve More Love. This is where we take time to appreciate those musicians and bands that just don't get the attention they deserve, and they can be artists that have had careers lasting decades, but for whatever reason they just didn't get the same attention that their peers got, or they can be musicians with just 20 followers on Spotify. Whatever the case is, these are all musical artists that definitely deserve more attention, and you're missing out if you don't know about their music. And I'm really excited for this episode because we have a progressive rock band, a really great folk act, and then a progressive metal band that quite frankly instantly became one of my favorite bands of all time, and I think they are without a doubt one of the greatest metal bands out there today, but they just remain criminally underrated, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But with all that out of the way, let's just get right into it and start talking about some amazing musicians. The first band in this episode is progressive metal pioneers King's X. Formed in 1979, King's X did not have their first full debut album until 1988 with Out of the Silent Planet. Since then, they have consistently released albums, with their most recent one coming out in 2022. Despite this, and the fact that they've been an influence on massive bands like Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Dream Theater, Pantera, and the Smashing Pumpkins, they've only had their albums chart in the Billboard Top 100 twice. Which is a shame, because if you like any of the previously mentioned bands, you'll probably enjoy a lot of what King's X has to offer. Their songs generally tend to be mid-paced bangers with really chuggy, doomy riffs while still having a bit of gospel and southern rock mixed in there. Out of all the songs I've heard by King's X, I'd have to say that their most interesting album to me, from what I've heard so far, is their second album, Gretchen Goes to Nebraska. It came out in 1990 and really helped pave the way for bands like Alice in Chains and Pantera. If you listen to songs like Mission, and especially the song Out of the Silent Planet, you'll really be able to hear the influence they had on those bands. Something else I love about this band is Doug Pinnick's vocals. He knows when to be more reserved when the song calls for it, especially when he's harmonizing with guitarist and fellow vocalist Ty Tabor, and he also knows when to just go completely ham and crank it up to 11 and give us some rich, sultry gospel rock metal vocals. So if you're interested in getting into King's X, I would point you in the direction of their second album, Gretchen Goes to Nebraska. My personal favorite songs from that album are Out of the Silent Planet with its really ominous vocal melodies. I also really love Summerland, and The Mission especially. If you're a huge fan of Soundgarden, like I am, you'll probably instantly love that song. So those are the songs I would recommend if you're interested in getting into King's X. And honestly, if you know any really banging King's X songs, please let me know in the comments below. Okay, and the next band in this episode is a band that could not be any different from the first and the third band that I'm going to be talking about, but they still make absolutely incredible music, and that band is Slainte. They were a folk band from Tacoma, Washington that played traditional Irish music. Unfortunately, I don't have as much information about this band as I wish I would, because there's a couple other bands with the name Slainte from different parts of the country that play the same kind of music, but the one that I'm talking about is the one from Tacoma, Washington that I believe stopped being active around 2002. I've talked about this before, but when doing traditional music, it can be pretty intimidating as a musician to do a song that has been around for 150 years and has been done by thousands of different people, and to try to take that song and make it your own. But Slainte really does manage to do that. They really do find ways to arrange these certain songs, whether it be slowing down the tempo, speeding it up a bit, just making it all instrumental. Whatever they do, it just sounds unique to them. There's also just so much energy in the recordings of their music. There's something intimate and personal about listening to them, and you can really feel the passion and the excitement they have for this kind of music just pouring its way out of the speakers. And before I make some recommendations for specific songs to check out by Slainte, I thought maybe I could just tell the story of how I first heard their music, and maybe hearing that story might kind of give you a better idea of what their music is like and why it resonates so much with me. So it was right around 2020, just as the world was going to complete shit, and in addition to losing my job and having the AC in my home break down, I had a bed bug infestation that I was dealing with that I had not been able to get rid of yet, so I was sleeping out on the couch in my living room. Needless to say, that was a lot of stress, and it really fucking sucked. So around this time, I started reading a lot more than I used to, just to be able to take my mind off of everything that was going on. And one night, I was sitting down reading a book, laying on the couch. I had just gotten my AC fixed, so at least that was going for me, but I still had to sleep out on my couch because of bed bugs, which are fucking disgusting. And I put on, I was reading a book on Irish history. I just put on a YouTube playlist of Celtic music, and about halfway through, Slainte came on with their version of Star of the County Down, and I just instantly froze and stopped reading, started listening to it, because it was just such a beautiful rendition of this song. And it just made me feel so at peace, and I just had a moment of clarity where I'm like, hey, everything's gonna be fine. It's okay. Don't worry about all this stuff that's going on. Just being able to sit there and listen to the song and just feel at peace for once, you know, in the crazy summer of 2020, when everything was going to absolute shit, just really resonated with me, and it just made me feel so at peace. So every single time I listen to Slainte, I still get a little bit of that feeling that I had the first time I listened to them. And I guess that's the best way I could describe their music. If you just want something that makes you feel at ease, something that is just really beautiful and can just kind of take you to a mellow, little mellow personal spot, go check them out. I know for myself personally, I will always be very grateful that I just stumbled across them by accident. And their music was just introduced to me in a time when I really needed to hear music like this. And so if you couldn't tell by that, my favorite song that Slainte has done is their version of the Star of the County Down. It really is an amazing rendition of that song, so if you want to get into them, I would say that's the best place to start. I also highly recommend checking out their album Cup of Tea. Their instrumental songs on that album are just really amazing. My personal favorites are Kesh Jig and Leitrim Fancy. I also really love Caroline's Draught, and they do a really good version of Wild Mountain Time. Not quite as good as their version of Star of the County Down, but still pretty good. So yeah, if you want to go listen to some beautifully serene Celtic music, Slainte is definitely worth giving a listen to. Okay, and for this episode, I really saved the best for last, because this next artist I want to talk about is a band that is making some of the greatest heavy metal music that has ever been put out, and they still remain unbelievably underrated. The band I'm talking about is Protest the Hero, and they have consistently released amazing album after amazing album. I'll be honest with you, I think that Protest the Hero's latest release, Olympus, which came out in 2020, is one of the greatest heavy metal albums of all time. Now, if you've heard of Protest the Hero, you're probably saying, yeah, they're one of the greatest metal bands out there today, and they deserve way more attention. And if you haven't heard of Protest the Hero, you might be thinking, is this guy overselling them a bit? I'm not, though. Imagine a band with a singer that has the operatic wailing of Bruce Dickinson, but came from a metalcore background, is able to do gutturals, writes insanely catchy melodies while having lyrics that just provide emotional gut punches. Now imagine that that same band has guitars that are so insanely technical and yet still have a ton of attitude and don't lose any of their emotion, that you don't even care that they hardly ever solo, but when they do solo, it still blows your mind. And now try to imagine that that band has taken a lot from progressive metal acts like Haken, Dream Theater, King Crimson, where they just have these insane rhythms, but they still maintain a mindset where they're trying to write in a way that would appeal to fans of traditional heavy metal and still have really big anthemic choruses or really catchy verses and combine them all into one. That's kind of the best way I can describe Protest the Hero's music. I mean, it's not like these guys are completely unknown. They are, especially in the progressive metal community. But I've still talked to plenty of people in person at concerts, whether it was a Haken concert, Devin Townsend concert, Dream Theater concert, an Animals as Leaders concert, friggin' Marty Friedman and Queensryche concert. I've been talking to people there. I've talked to them about obscure bands, and I say, hey, have you heard of Protest the Hero? And the response is usually, who? Protest the what? What's that? No, I've never heard of them. And that is just so frustrating. I remember I was walking around one day and I ran into a guy who had a Seven Spires t-shirt. Seven Spires is another really cool band, really underground, even smaller than Protest the Hero. And I say, oh, have you heard of Protest the Hero? No. I'm like, you're wearing a fucking Seven Spires t-shirt. How have you not heard of these guys? So that's why I wanted to make sure I talked about Protest the Hero on this channel, because even though they're way bigger than me, they still are the definition of a band that deserves more love and more attention, especially when you consider the quality of the music they're putting out. If you want some specific track recommendations to get into them, like I said, you should probably just go listen to the entirety of Olympus. My personal favorite songs from that album are Little Snakes, Reverie, The Fireside, and The Migrant Mother. And if you like that album, which I can't imagine you wouldn't, then go check out their back catalog. I really love Pacific Myth, and Fortress is also really good. Volition is another great album. So seriously, do yourself a favor and go check out some Protest the Hero. And that's it for this episode of Artists That Deserve More Love. And if you think this channel deserves more love, please like, comment, subscribe, all of that YouTube stuff. I know it's a cliche to ask, but it really does help the channel grow. I greatly appreciate it, so thank you in advance for that. And please let me know what you think of all these bands in the comments below. Have you gone and checked them out? Did you already know about them? What do you think? I'd love to hear from all of you. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you at the next video.